This is Darren from Cirrus.com. Today we're going to discuss how to configure your reports for Easywire and EasyTouch test systems. To view the reports and change them, you need to first have a test program. Edit that program by clicking on the Edit View button. Go into the Set Test Defaults tab in Tab 2 in EasyTouch, or it's Tab 3 in Easywire software. Once in that tab, you'll see the Configure Reports and Auto Print button, as well as a Reports button down at the bottom. Configure Reports and Auto Print gets you the 4 main test reports that are printed out or can be printed out automatically while doing your testing. This Reports button takes you to essentially what the recipe of this electrical test program would equate to on paper form. If I go into my test program report, I see this is a paper version of a Cirrus electrical test program. I see the system settings, test parameters, from to list, as well as how my fixturing is wired back to the tester. So your mating cables to what you're testing and how they map back to the front of the test system. I can print or save these reports in PDF format at any time. The assembly wiring report is also like a recipe, but this is of the device that you're testing. It's a static report. It does not show in real time errors or any of the measured values while you're testing, but it's meant to show the schematic of what you're testing based on the graphics that you've created or chosen. We can show you 2 graphics at a time, so 2 connectors. If I just click on one of the pairs of my connectors for this program and I double click with my mouse, it will show me the schematic and diagram of this cable assembly. In this case, it's a 64-pin header straight through, so our wiring just goes 1 to 1. This will show components for resistors, caps, diodes, and if it goes to other connectors, then the other connector name would be listed instead of like a 001. This report again is for documentation purposes only of the program that you've created or the device that you're testing. Again, I can print or save it as a PDF file as well. All of these reports are all configured very similar, so all of the functions like right-clicking, dragging, dropping, those are all the same between any of the reports that you can choose from. Let's look now at the main reports that we get while we're testing with our software. Back to Configure Reports and Auto Print. My choices are the In-Process report, which is a temporary report that does not get saved to the database. The Test report, which is the final report, does get saved to the database, and it is the final report of whether it was good or bad, and the one most often used to supply to the end user of the product to which you're testing. We have a test label, which could be printed in conjunction or at the same time as either the in-process or test report, and it could be a good label or a bad label. You also have a run report. At the end of testing, let's say 10 cables within the same program, if you do them all sequentially, you'll get a run report that will come out at the end showing that you tested 10 cables, how many were good, how many were bad, and what each line item means. Let's go ahead and delve into the in-process report. The in-process report is the temporary report usually used for errors or identifying errors while the device is still plugged into the test system. Most of the time you would configure this geared towards seeing the errors as opposed to the good measured values, because this is a report most often used in-house by the operators to repair or do rework on assemblies that didn't pass the first time. Any of the fields in the in-process report, by clicking on them with the left mouse and highlighting and dragging them, they will drag or drop wherever you place them. What you see is what you get. So if the fields are on top of each other, that's exactly how they will print out. This allows you to then configure all of the different areas independent of each other. Some of these functions, by right-clicking once it's highlighted, will give you the ability to add other fields. There's different fields that go in the different sections of the report. In this case, we can change the font or edit the field name if we so chose. by typing it in, clicking OK, and it will change the name, or you can right click and say change the font and make it a bigger font or a colored font, allowing you to configure it any way that you like. Each section can be controlled whether it's visible or not visible through the options menu, and there's a lot of things in the options menu, but you can look here where the check boxes are next to the different section titles. So company information title, if I remove that, then a space disappears. If I click on it, it goes back in place. Same for any of the other fields that run down your list. You can pick and choose which ones are important to you or to your end customer, and which ones you want to include for the different reports. These functions are all the same on all of the reports that you've seen so far and that you will see. There's always the options menu. We can import or export report configurations from one system to another, show or hide different blocks as shown below. You can disable graphics if you don't want to see the graphics. You can also export the data that's in this report to a CSV file, and you can save this as a factory default if you wish, so all reports will look the same as whatever one you're configuring at the time. You can also choose your own bitmap image. Here I've chosen the Cirrus.com logo for ours. Just by right-clicking in that field space, you can say choose a new bitmap, and then you can find a bitmap that fits your application and replace it. And that can be a colored bitmap or black and white bitmap image. Once you're done with the report of dragging and dropping, sizing, and making it look the way that you want, if you want to save it just for the one program, for this cable assembly in this case, I could click the X and it would ask me if I'd like to save it for this test program only, or I can save it as the system default, or I can continue without saving if I've totally messed it up. So if I save it for this test program only, next time I go in for this program, this is the way the report will look. Again, if I wanted to change that to one that I have on, let's say, another test system, I can go up to Options. I can say Import a Report Configuration, and I can pull out one of my in-process reports that I've pre-configured. Asks if I want to overwrite. Yes. And now it looks back to the format from which I started. On any of the column data that you see down here where it says name under net hypot status, the name, test method, measured IR, any of those columns on any of the reports, you can right click and say edit columns, and you can add or remove the different columns, and you can also change the names on the columns as well to provide more information for your application. So if I just type in a new name here, hit change, now that column will change to the net name that I pointed out. Also in these fields, I have my choices to print this report, and this is just for this report as you're seeing on the screen. You can also do this when you're testing, but you can print the report manually, or you can save the report to a PDF file for further viewing or sending off to your end customer. The auto print screen is one on each report, at least on these 4 reports, that you can choose on whether you would like it to automatically print on a good test, on a bad test, or on every test. Usually in the reports, a in-process report will print as soon as the screen turns good or bad, whereas a test report will only print once you remove the device and it's ready for the next device. That's the one that gets stored in the database, is the next one we're going to go into, is the test report. You can also set up some auto export to CSV. This is kind of kludgy in my book for a feature, but it will export the data for each test to a directory that's predefined by us, and call for details if you'd like on that. It does overwrite every time with the program, so you have to put in a listener or sniffer program that looks for a change and then pulls that data into your own third-party application if you wish. Again, you can also hit the help at any time, and it will further instruct you on this report or how to configure the reports. The next report looks almost the same, but it's called the test report. This report is the final report that gets stored into the database. This is the one that is usually geared toward good data, because that's the one you're going to be providing to the end customer and looking up in the future. So I make mine so it shows all of the good measured values, and I have omitted under options the error details section because I would hope that I don't have any errors in this section if it's a final report, and that they're always good. The test label is just that. It's a configurable label. This guide just shows you the approximate width of the label to which you're dealing with. You can drag and drop and right click on any of the fields as well here, just like any of the reports, and choose what information and how much space you have to fill and put that in for your label. If you need to change the size of your label as it appears on the screen, you can go to Options, Page Settings, and change the width and the length, and all it does is move this width marker to let you know how far you have and how much data you can fit in that field as a representation. You can also auto print the label, but in this case you can select a different printer than the one you use for your reports. You can select a label printer. In this case it's a Zebra Designer label printer. And now if I turn that to on every good test, this label will print out every time I have a good condition on the tester. So when I plug the device in and it's good, and then I remove it, it will come up and print out my test label with the passed on there. Again, you can right click and increase the size if you wish, or change the color if for some strange reason you had a color printer. You could print that in green or in a smaller font size. You can even print in a barcode font if you wanted to just print out a barcode with a serial number on each. The serial number referenced here is a generic, but your serial number, if you choose to fill it in on each test, would appear here on each device and then get carried over into the label. Again, I can save that for this program or as my system default when I'm done. The run report is the report you get when you test multiple assemblies. After you open your program, you test the assemblies in sequential order, and then if you were to close the program, that would constitute one run. That run would be made up of different devices that would have been tested, let's say 1 through 10, and it would show the device ID number, the final result. The retry section is how many times do they have to try to get it to pass. And again, you can configure any of the information in these fields as well as adjust the names and the columns. Now let's go ahead and see how our reports work while we're testing. So let's go ahead and exit out of the editor, saving any changes we may have made. Back to the main menu, we'll start our test. High pot test. The assembly's good. At this point I can get the in-process report, which again is the temporary report. And I can either choose to manually print that, to save it as a PDF, or if I had my option to auto print turned on, then it would have already printed out as soon as it reached the status of this screen. If I go ahead and remove the cable assembly, I can now view the test report for that cable, which is the final report that gets logged into the database. You'll notice the formats are similar, but the names are different. Now let's go look at the reports in the past. So we can go browse any of the reports that we've collected over the years and view them in a place in the database. We go back to the main screen, go to Utilities, and you can choose from the Test Archive report or the Advanced Search report. If I click Advanced Search, I can find the current program that I was testing. Go ahead and hit Show on the records, and it will show me a list of all the cables that I've tested for that program. If I load the program, there is the final electrical test report, as we saw earlier. In the Report View Options window, you can also choose a date range or a serial number to look up, and look up the records that way as well. In the Test Archive report, it's about the same thing, but you just look up the program itself, say Show, and then it will give you a list of the runs that you've done, telling you how many cables were good and bad on each run. Double click, that will give you the run report, and if you double click again, drilling down, it will then give you the final electrical test report. So kind of two ways to get at the same kind of information, just depending on what your needs are for the day. Thanks for joining us today for our tutorial on how to use and set up your reports in Easywire and EasyTouch.